You're listening to A Creative Excuse, presented by Echo a Mano. This episode is ceramicist Heather Bradley. She's a local potter here in Santa Fe, and I've known Heather for a number of years and had a great little chat. Just getting to know each other better and learn about our histories. Up next at Echo a Mano is Regalos. It's a holiday small work show featuring prints and ceramics and jewelry. A lot of artists from Santa Fe and some from beyond, and some that I've never worked with before and some that I've worked with before. It should be really fun. There's over 50 artists. The display might be a little crazy, but it'll be a nice variety for gifty type things. And on view until the 24th of November is Grabados Oaxaqueños, a group show of 6 different printmakers from Oaxaca City. As always, please subscribe, rate, and review. Really helps to get the word out about the podcast. And thanks for listening. Well, thank you for doing this.
Well, thanks for asking me.
Oh, I had a funny day driving to Albuquerque. You had a funny thing. I don't know if you want to talk about your tooth.
Oh, sure. I had a traumatic experience eating olives and that weren't supposed to have pits.
Well, usually eating olives is a fun experience.
Oh, it was delightful until
for the first part.
For the first part,
yeah.
And then I bit down on a pit and cracked the root of my tooth.
Yuck.
So they had to extract it in pieces.
Oh God, I had my wisdom teeth out like a couple years ago, maybe like 3 years ago, and like the teeth were like fused to my jawbone, and so they had to like, I mean, it was like brutal.
Like they were using so much pressure and pliers and power tools and like hammering and chipping away in there for so long. But the Bee Gees were playing. So that helped a little bit, I guess.
Wow, so you felt funky.
It was Nights on Broadway.
I don't know. Did that really help, or was it just like this awkward, bizarre thing ever?
It made me think of my mom.
Oh.
So
that's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did she like
comforting?
The Bee Gees?
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Cool. Well, Heather Bradley, we've known each other for a while, and you show your work here at the gallery.
I do.
Yeah. And you grew up in Tennessee?
Yes.
Yeah. And what was that like? Your parents your mom was creative, right? She made pottery, didn't she?
Yeah. My mom was very creative. Well, growing up in Tennessee was not exactly what you'd expect, because I grew up in Oak Ridge, where the Manhattan Project was based, and so it was sort of less of an average Tennessee town and more of a government secret city that came up overnight.
Yeah.
So it's strange compared to the rest of Tennessee. But yes, my mom was very creative. Before she did ceramics, she did lots of other art forms.
Did your dad make work?
Oh God, no. My dad's a lifetime military man, and he was in Vietnam and just stayed in the Navy as his career, and then did some city management. Very not artistic.
Yeah. Did you have siblings, or do you have siblings?
I do.
Did you grow up as
still have all of them. Thank God. I have 2 sisters and a brother. Yeah. And are they creative? Sorry.
You tell me.
I was pretty sure that was the question. Yes, they're all musicians, or at least now. I mean, one is a professional musician, but they were all very musically inclined.
Yeah. Are they still in Tennessee?
2 of them are. Yeah.
Nice. Bluegrass?
No, we were more like rock and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my sister, who's a professional musician, is the lead singer of a band where they do a lot of covers, a lot of 70s and 80s and 90s too.
nice.
Yeah, just get a great voice.
Uh-huh. And how did you kind of find yourself into making objects? Did you have an attraction to it at a young age?
Well, I always wanted to be an artist when I was a kid, but I thought that it meant being able to draw realistically, in particular faces.
Right.
And
where did that come from? Is that school or?
Well, that's the question. I think it's mostly for me because my sister could do that.
Right.
She could draw faces really, really, really well and got so much positive feedback for it. She was like a magician in a way. She could capture people's likenesses so well.
And you were like, that's what it means to be an artist. I've got to do that.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, then you have no business calling yourself an artist.
So it'd be kind of funny if like every gallery was just like drawings of like faces.
Faces
done really well.
They have to be realistic.
Realistic face galleries.
So one big competition. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'm so glad that's not true.
Yeah. So you tried to do that for a while. You were like, I'm gonna do realistic faces.
Secretly, yeah. I would like.
You would do it secretly.
I would do it secretly
really?
Because I think I was just so intimidated by my sister's talent that I just kind of didn't want to do it in front of anyone. And so I would like take her art supplies and and find someone's photograph and try to copy and the face and using all her blending tools and fancy pencils and whatnot. And it just didn't measure up. So I wouldn't show them to anyone.
You weren't the realistic face drawer.
No. I mean, some of them were okay, but it wasn't like her.
Right. Did you do any like art classes in high school? Did you have any teachers that kind of helped you along the way, or?
Yeah. So until high school, I always loved making art, but never thought I had any talent. And so then in high school, I had to take an art class. My final year of high school, I had to take an art class. And I had been thinking that I was going to go into, there's a lot of pressure for me to go into hospital administration or genetic engineering. Like people.
Where did that come from?
My dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And myself, because I was like, I got to do something. I got to go to college for sure.
Yeah.
Make a living and be successful and do the right thing. And so I took this art class just to satisfy the requirements for high school. And the teacher said to me, so are you talented like your sister?
Oh, God.
And I said, no, I'm just here because I have to be.
Yeah.
And then as the semester went on, I got more and more and more and more into my projects, and for the first one was a self-portrait of my face, just my face, but she let me abstract it a bit, and so over the semester I got more and more freedom and fell in love with it for sure.
With drawing, were you playing with other media too, or?
Yeah, we used a lot of color, like I remember a lot of color pastels, but we got clay. Yeah. And then we had to do realistic, not portraiture. We were doing figure sculpting. Yeah. And so that was my first introduction to clay. It was like try to sculpt the human body as well as you can, as accurately as you can. And so I still felt like a failure in a way as an artist at that point, and like it wasn't for me. But then at the end of the semester, I remember the teacher saying, suggesting that I let other kids have a chance to be in this art show that she'd entered my work in. And it was kind of a turnaround, like her sort of reeling me back, saying like I needed to get less attention or let other people have more of a chance. And I was like, just looked at my art differently when she said that. Like
That's weird. Like, do you mean like, I don't, like she was saying that you shouldn't be in the show, or what do you mean?
Yeah, she said that I already had like 3 or 4 pieces in there, but then I wanted another piece in there, and I was asking for too much. And it was so strange to me because it was like I never even thought of myself as being worthy of being in the show. And then she was trying to say that I had a big head about it. Yeah. So it just made me think like, oh, maybe I'm a natural artist and that's my thing.
Like you felt like the urge to kind of go deper into it.
And I couldn't even help myself, and I didn't even recognize it. That was like where I was putting all my energy. And I had just had such a bad attitude about it at the beginning of the semester.
Wow. Yeah, I can relate to that sense of like needing to, or feeling like I'm supposed to like find some other career. You know, like when I started college, it was I wanted to do photography, but I started with graphic design. So I was like, oh, I can get a job doing that, you know. And after a semester, I was like, no, this is not for me. You know, it was you started, you know, with mechanical, like just cutting up things. You know, they made you build your projects out of, you know, physical materials and not using a computer. Even though like people had started using computers for graphic design by that time, you know, they start you out, you know, being really meticulous about your craftsmanship. And I didn't resonate with that at the time. And I really wanted to make photographs. I did photography in high school and really enjoyed it and loved being in the darkroom. Felt like making magic, you know, But there was this sense that like I needed to do something that was going to make me money. It's like these stories, you know, these boxes that, you know, either come from our parents or from society, or, you know, that tell us that, you know, what we're kind of naturally drawn to, we can't do, or that it's not adequate.
Yeah. Well, I remember feeling kind of devastated when I realized that I was an artist. Like, because the route of hospital administration or genetic engineering seemed so clear cut. Like you go get a degree and then you go get a job because you have the specific credentials that you need to pay the mortgage, and you know, like all made so much sense. And then when I was like, oh, I'm an artist and I can't help it, and like this is what I have to do, it was a little bit devastating. Like, oh, great. So hopefully I won't end up cutting off my ear and mailing it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there isn't a clear-cut path in that way, and not even more so. Like, I mean, if you go through the art school route, they don't tell you avenues like how you make it work. You know?
No, all through college, I was kind of aware that, like, well, when I get out, I'll be qualified to do nothing. No. I mean, I'll be qualified to make the art that I have spent years, you know, building my skill and all that. But I knew that financially it was going to be creative. I had to be creative.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's a trip. And so you went to college, and did you start off going, I'm going to do art major?
Well, I still felt the pressure to do something that wouldn't upset my parents with how insecure my future seemed. So I started with art history. And so I thought, well, I'll just teach art history, and that will satisfy my desire to be in the art field. But it was pretty clear early on with that too, that no, I have to be making things.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's a big difference between, you know, that sort of intellectual study of, you know, past artists or even present artists, and like actually making a thing.
Yeah.
It's really different.
Yeah. It was easier to read and write about artists than it was. The struggle in the studio was way more compelling. That's where I wanted to spend my time. But I was early on more successful at writing papers than I was actually making stuff.
Right. I mean, there's that clear-cut pathway again, right? Like, you have the mold. You can look to other people to like say, oh, that's how you do it? Okay, I'm going to do it that way. And I guess in a certain way you can look at other artists, but like in terms of like actually making a living and like how to sort of that sort of compulsion for acceptance, that compulsion for like wanting that approval, that I think everyone has in varying degrees. When you have sort of urges that are outside of those norms, it's hard, It is.
Learning that you're an artist is like that, like almost like being diagnosed with something or sentenced with something.
You've been diagnosed with artist.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Yeah, like, oh great, okay, so now I know. I was also a little bit upset with the adults in my life that hadn't told me earlier. They didn't recognize that. Yeah, I felt like I'd lost some years, like that they should have seen it.
Yeah,
I could have had more time.
Didn't know how to look, Yeah,
I wasn't drawing faces accurately enough.
Right. Yeah, and your like your mud abstract mud sculptures, they were like, oh, that's nothing.
that abstract mud sculpture that I made of a naked woman in high school. I think she was pretty much naked anyway. It got an award in some show, but I was so ashamed of it. I never showed it to anyone. It was so bad. I couldn't believe they gave it an award.
Well, we can be our own worst critics, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah. So did you eventually say, okay, art history is not for me, I'm going to go studio art?
Yeah. So I was in Florida, in Pensacola, at the University of West Florida, and I wrote a paper about Georgia O'Keeffe. I wrote about Ram's head with hollyhock on one of her paintings. And then I saw an ad for a national student exchange to New Mexico. Of course, I'd been studying New Mexico, and then when I came out to New Mexico on the student exchange, and that's when I decided just to change to studio art. I still studied art history, but I just knew that I needed to be making stuff, and that artists have to take art history class anyway, so I wasn't giving that up.
Right. And did you go back to Florida?
No, I came for one semester to Las Cruces, and I was just going to stay the one semester, but then I thought, no, I'll stay 1 year. And then I just never left. So I've stayed here since I was 21. Yeah. In New Mexico.
Did you go to NMSU? Yeah. And ceramics, or?
Well, painting. I got my undergrad in painting, and I always did ceramics throughout that program. I did it as much as I did painting, but the painting professors were really the ones that I resonated with the most, and so I just thought that was the right program for me. And then when I started the graduate program, I also started it in painting, and then I brought my ceramics to painting critique, and everyone in the room was like, "You should clearly be in the ceramics program."
Wow.
So I switched to ceramics, but it was kind of already what I was focused on. I just wanted the painting professors.
So it felt more kind of just like something you already knew, and it was just a little nudge rather than like something that you were surprised by?
It was kind of disappointing because I thought I was sort of putting equal energy into the paintings and ceramics, but then when they called me on it, I guess I felt kind of ashamed, like I was, because the painting studio was bigger and nicer, and that was the program that I was in. And
it's high art.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And you're making painting.
And it was what I got my undergraduate degree in. And so, I remember also feeling kind of like been sentenced or diagnosed as a
ceramicist.
Great. Okay. So I had to switch to ceramics.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
And clearly you can take painting to ceramics, the qualities of painting I still have in my ceramics with color and line and mark making.
Yeah, totally. One of the things that I'm fascinated by is the way that it seems like you work in like one like you take one idea and you like really explore it, right? You have like a particular form, and it seems like you really go deep in it, and you make a ton of work in this one specific little thing.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Like, what is it? Is it something where you have to see every possible iteration of a form, or?
My first introduction to ceramics was, I met this fellow that was one of the first introductions to ceramics that was like classically trained, and he talked about how his professor would force him to do that, like make 60 or more than that, much higher numbers than that, probably a couple hundred of one particular form, and it sounded horrible to me, but sometimes when I'd hold his work, I would just be in so much awe of how nice it was to handle.
Yeah.
So that made an impression on me, that like the wheel throwing itself lends itself to that, because you do want to make one form as perfect as you possibly can. But also I think because I'm just, my personality sort of lends itself to repetition. Repetition is definitely a common theme in my life.
Yeah.
I'm really active, athletic outside, and I often do the exact same thing over and over and over again. I just kind of feel like that's how I learn. Just by repeating something, is like I draw the most out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a way where, I mean, you can go deep into something very specific, right? It's like narrow and deep versus like shallow and wide, I guess. I think that's one way of learning, and like taking something and like that kind of striving for perfection, I guess, or you like, do one thing and like, oh, there's this little thing that happened when I made this one, and I'm going to try that again. Or, oh, I didn't like that little thing that I did, I'm going to try that again. Do you feel like it's just sort of like this, like little things that you're constantly refining in the process?
Yeah, that's well said, because like there's certain artists that make the same shape over and over again for like their whole lifetime, like Toshiko Takaezu. She's like in her 90s. She died recently, and mostly her whole career she made these like pod shapes, like closed ceramic vessels that she made on the wheel, and it was like the same shape her whole career. And people love her work, and she's super famous and successful and all that, but I imagine there were some points during her lifetime or her career where people are like, well, maybe make a bowl, like do something different, like make a different kind of shape. And I think she wanted to perfect that shape as much as possible. And I guess I have a similar drive to like want to perfect one particular shape.
Well, I think when you take the work kind of independently of the artist, I mean, I'm guilty of this, like getting bored with like looking at, I don't know, Jasper Johns or Jackson Pollock, or people that have like done a single thing for many, many, many years, and I think you have to look at it in the context of process and the artist to really make sense of it and to get the meaning behind it. Otherwise, like, and I'm sure some artists are doing it because it's just commercially successful or whatever. Like they stumble upon the formula and they just keep cranking out the formula, right? That happens. But then I think that there's, real artists that just are getting so much out of that constant refinement, that going deeper into a thing.
Well, and the potter's wheel kind of lends itself to that as well, because no matter what you do, you're going to get something that has a circle as its fundamental shape, unless you obviously people alter the shapes. But I think that mesmerizing, like circular force is also part of just what I love about the wheel and the repetition. It's like, it's similar to like riding your bike or running, or just that the repetition of the wheel itself makes me want to, it'll just keep making multiples on its own if you let it.
Right.
Practically.
Have you ever played an instrument? Any music instruments?
No, that's the thing, is all my siblings were so good at like natural instruments, and just hearing music in a particular way. And no, not at all.
Makes me think you could be a good drummer.
I don't think so. I don't know. When I was a kid, people would always say, "Oh, you have good hands," and I didn't understand what it meant. I would think it was like I should go be a doctor, or like operate on people, but I don't want to. So.
No. Okay.
I don't.
Yeah.
I've never found myself to be musically inclined. Instruments feel really foreign to me.
Yeah.
So I was happy to learn that I do have some artistic talent, but it's not really playing instruments.
Diagnosis. Yeah.
Different diagnosis.
Right. Well, and one of the things that that kind of struck me, we recently had an event here and with your pottery, and I don't think I had ever really seen the full scope of your work together in the way that I did, a couple of weeks ago. We've had some shows together at FNC, and like those installations were a bit more uniform, right? They were more kind of like they maybe had one or two different forms together, right? And they kind of had a little bit more of a focused sort of statement, or like a narrow band it was working in. And to me, it was very powerful. But there's something about seeing the variety of different shapes that you make, but still have the kind of through line where it's obviously your work, that made it speak to me in a different way, in a way that made me make more sense of you and your work and your process. And I'm sure that's like, I mean, that takes a long time, especially if you're working on one form for months or however long. I don't know. How long do you find you take a shape and work with it?
Well, that feels great. I like hearing that.
Yeah.
I have been making these shapes recently, the smaller ones that are sort of like urn shape in a way, those small vases with the
sort of
opening.
spherical.
Yes, spherical, but then have a neck that has a bit of a mouth to it as well. I guess I've been making those I made them in white clay for about 2 months, and then I made them in brown clay for about 2 months. So that would be kind of that would be a pattern, maybe a couple months.
But that sphere shape, though, I feel like that's been a part of your work for years, right?
Yeah, that has been. And that really reminds me of that artist, Toshiko Takeizu, who has made the same shape over and over and over again, because that shape always teaches me that I could spend a lifetime trying to perfect that shape. Yeah, it's always a challenge to make it, and I always feel like it's not quite right. It could always be better. So I'll probably do that for my whole life, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, and I think your work also benefits from multiples as well, like seeing groupings. I've always kind of felt that way. Do you feel that way too, or?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I usually edit about, it's a high mortality rate. Like, maybe at least half of the pots that I make don't end up seeing the light of day. Really, I'll either throw them out or smash them or whatever. So, yeah, I always think of them as it's always a group. Oftentimes you'll just sell one and it lives by itself in one person's shelf, and one home. But I always want to have a group shot or have them all meet each other.
Right.
Yeah, definitely work in multiples.
Yeah. Well, it's like that kind of little subtle variances where like this pot says this little thing, and this pot says it just a little bit differently, and this pot's just a little bit wider, and they kind of it's like a sentence almost, I guess, where it's like they're each like little words that form the meaning.
I like that. Or maybe like musical notes. I thought of them like that. I've thought of them like that. Or siblings. All my siblings have red hair, but some are straight, some are curly, some are.
Yeah, for sure. And even like the kind of sphere objects on the wall, even have that sort of musical notation kind of sense to it.
Well, I don't think I've ever made art while not listening to music. It's so rare that it's every once in a while it'll be silent in my studio, but I remedy that pretty quickly.
What's your go-to? What gets you going?
Oh, it changes all the time. I mean, I definitely have roots in like 70s because of my mother and my family, but I listen to all kinds of stuff, R&B, but usually love songs of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, and well, it seems like that makes me think about the ways in which you kind of bring, I don't know, I feel like you try to bring narrative in certain ways to some of your work. I mean, most obviously the ones with the writing on them. And I know that, and of course, right, artists are always bringing in their experience into whatever they're doing. But I mean, it seems like that you're really interested in bringing narrative into your work at times.
Yeah, I think I'm interested in the way that you can reveal yourself as much as you decide to. With ceramics. It's really easy to be completely anonymous and not reveal anything about, your personal life, but just reveal, have someone hold an object and feel like they get some kind of indescribable sense of you. But, I do like to put writing on the pots sometimes and have people sort of try to figure out what they say or what they don't say. But I'm pretty private. I've been around artists that do self-portraits where you kind of get a sense of all their traumas and what they look like naked. And I'm not that revealing. I'm pretty private.
Yeah. Well, even the ones that have writing on it, they're obscured, right? Yeah. It's kind of like this, it's like a teaser in a way. It's like it draws you in to want to sort of construct meaning around it, but it doesn't tell you specifically what it means, right?
Yeah, and people want to know, but I guess I like that. That might be something that I do again soon, like the writing on the pots, because I love writing in cursive anyway, and then writing on the clay is equally gratifying. But people want to know what it says and what it means, and I like to sort of watch them wonder. Yeah, right, right. And be maybe slightly uncomfortable without an answer.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like being an artist, right?
Yeah.
I like that art can so many times reveal to us like the ways that we construct meaning, right? I think that's how it can be a sort of teacher to our subjective selves, right? Because it's like, unless somebody's there telling us this is what it means, or you read the wall label that tells you what it means, we're constructing our own meaning around it. I mean, we're constantly doing that anyway, just in our own lives, right? But I think that if we're conscious of that process and we pay attention to it, it can really teach us, how do we make sense of the world? How do we construct meaning? I think it's to me, curating or putting a space together like this, it teaches me how I see, it by just sort of following what I'm attracted to and saying, why am I attracted to that? What does this go with this? Does this go with that? And being kind of more investigatory about it, it can really be educational, and I think art is very much the same way,
Well, and when people ask you questions about what it means and why you make it, then you have to try to put words to it too, and try to answer that for yourself. But sometimes it feels like just a mystery. Like, I don't know why.
Right. Yeah.
Just can't help myself.
Right. Why do birds sing?
Yeah. Because I couldn't do hospital administration.
Yeah. That'd be like funny to put that on your business card. Heather Bradley, artist, because I couldn't do hospital administration.
Yeah, or genetic engineering.
Did I ever show you that that artist Brody Neuenschonder? I think I may have.
With the handwriting?
Yeah. I want to give you his book. I don't know. Every time we talk about the handwriting on your work, I want to bring that up. So I should give you that book to look at.
Yeah, well, I remember his work.
Yeah. That's cool. So I'm reminded back when you were talking about Georgia O'Keeffe, and it was Skull with Hollyhock.
Ram's Head.
Ram's Head with Hollyhock.
It's a skull.
So I always ask people, like, what's a piece of art that kind of really shifted your thinking on art or changed your trajectory? That was just like really impactful. Would that be one of them?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I definitely love Georgia O'Keeffe, and I think of her career as she's a role model to me for sure.
Yeah.
But a work that really shifted my ideas about art would be Andy Goldsworthy. I mean, I can't think of a particular work, but when I saw his documentary Rivers and Tides, and then the new one too, but yeah, that really blew my mind of like, whoa, you don't even have to put it in a gallery because it can just disappear in the field overnight. Or
his work is super inspiring, and he's somebody that's just so in it. Like, I mean, he's just like, there's no kind of difference to me anyway, but like, it seems like the fact that he has to like make photographs and like to sell things, like, seems like a real imposition. He's like, oh, I have to do this. You know?
Yeah, it's so beautiful how much of an artist he is. Yeah, he's wonderful. I wonder how different my life would be if someone showed me that movie when I was 13. It didn't exist. But.
Right. Right. Or like Smithson. I don't know if there was maybe a documentary on him earlier, but yeah, I mean, I have to wonder too, like, I mean, I would imagine, unless he came from, money, that you would have to sacrifice a lot in order to devote that much time and energy into doing that kind of work. I mean, he's essentially just playing, right? He's just playing in the woods or on the beach or whatever.
Yeah, but there's some labor involved.
Oh,
sure.
No doubt. No doubt there's labor.
He's playing.
Yeah. But I mean, nobody's going to pay him for that labor, right? Unless like, I get to have a photograph of it. Okay, cool.
Right.
Or it's like a wall that somebody commissions him to make, or something like that. That's, I mean, in a similar, I mean, that's kind of like taking that artist idea to an extreme in a way, right?
Yeah, it really blew my mind. I used to teach art appreciation, and I always had my students watch that movie, and I hope it blew their mind too. It's like really just such a different idea about what an artist can be.
Right. Well, it's taking the idea of process and almost like removing the artifact, removing the art, right? The piece, the evidence of it is just way less important, than the doing, the doing of it. I'd imagine that a lot of your process might feel similar. I mean, you have like the evidence, you have the objects that exist from the making of it, but the making of the thing, even if like you were to smash every single piece, I'm sure you would still be getting a high percentage of whatever it is that you're getting from it.
Yeah, it's true. Like if the stuff that I made never got fired or never got seen, and I just spent all these hours throwing on the wheel, that would be my favorite part of it. Or even if I made all the work and it went to the gallery and it all sold, my favorite part of the experience was the making of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I still like the money, taking it to the mall and the shopping
right.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But the part that I'm really left with would be when I was alone on the wheel and I felt really zoned in and the process.
But there's still pieces it seems like you get attached to. Like I remember sometimes when we pick out things, you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to let that one go.
Oh, that's definitely true. And just recently when we had that pop-up show, they took 2 of the pieces
that you wanted
that were mine.
Yeah.
No, I just had these 3 pieces in my house that I thought were just mine, and I sold 2 of them. And no, it's great because I know I can make more. But
right, yeah, it's funny that kind of that tension between process and artifact, or process and object. Yes. What else? What's next? What you're in school, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I'm in school because I always have to have some kind of jobby.
Some kind of jobby.
No.
Well, before you went through a massage program.
Yeah. That wasn't the right jobby for me. No, I'm going for social work, and so I've actually been studying art therapy a little bit in this introductory program, and it's interesting how they describe how helpful it is, art therapy, to make an external object of your internal feelings. And then I'm not sure I'm going to go into art therapy, but I'm going to get a master's in social work and go from there. I maybe end up being some kind of a counselor of some sort.
Yeah. What draws you to that?
Well, because I guess I've always felt like a really empathic person, and I've always sort of thought of that as like a weakness in a way, like a liability. Like, it's so easy for people to tell me their problems, and then I can spend all this time like thinking about it and feeling it for them, and maybe be helpful sometimes. And I guess I just kind of realized that that's a quality that I could turn into something that could be really helpful and help me also make a living. Yeah. But
that's hard too, right? I mean, if you're feeling deeply what other people are going through, I mean, that's a whole nother set of feelings that we're dealing. I mean, I feel similarly, I feel like I can tap in really easily to whatever people are going through. And, I'm still learning how to like tease apart, like what's me and what's not me, and going into like a situation where you're intentionally, working with people who are, going through traumatic experience or just processing, like that takes a lot of like, I don't know,
the self-care and boundaries and like learning how to. I learned that in massage school. I mean, that's in massage school is they teach you how to have barriers and boundaries so that you don't get so burdened by other people's problems that you have a hard time functioning yourself.
Right.
So I feel up for it. I mean, I think it's because I'm 43 years old, and I don't think I would have been up for it earlier. So I think it's kind of a good later in life career.
Yeah, right. You have more of a sense of kind of who you are and where you're at and what you want and what you don't. And yeah. And
I have a good role model. Like I have a therapist who is really wonderful, and I understand how I can see how she can hear me and listen to me and feel my feelings, but not go home at night and be hurt by it herself.
Right. Yeah. I was just yesterday I was coming out of the parking lot, and I was turning right onto Canyon, and it's like a really narrow street, and somebody was trying to turn into the exit. And so I was just like, okay, whatever, I'm going to turn right. And she's very, very close, but I could see that I was going to make the turn. And she started like really frantically like going, no. And then she would honk at me, and she was like looking down going, no. And I'm like looking at her, and I'm still turning, and I'm like, it's okay. Everything's fine. And I'm turning. And even afterwards, I had this image of her like screaming at me, just like stuck in my head, you know, and she was just like still sitting there screaming, you know, so sometimes like when stuff like that happens for me, it's like, I have to like really just like, whoa, like, I don't know, either put up, if I don't have my shields up at the moment, like I have to like, I don't know, learn how to flesh that out, you know?
Yeah. That's got to be part of it. Is people are going to explode on you, and it's not going to be about you. I guess. I don't know. I just started this social work program, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Anything else you want to say, talk about? Anything on the wheel that's new, that's coming out?
Well, there's the show here for Christmas. I've been making coffee mugs, which is
that's pretty different, right? They're hand built.
Yeah, they're hand built. It's different for me because I I've been making pottery for 24 years. So you'd think I'd have made millions of mugs by now, but I wanted to make slab built coffee mugs because I have these stamps that I got in India that I really wanted to use, and I'm just sort of into it right now because I make them for like people that I love, and then they get sold to whoever, they end up with whoever, that hopefully people I love too, but usually people I don't know, but that's why I'm into making them right now. It's just imagining the person that's gonna, like, imagining that I'm making them for my loved ones. That's what I'm doing.
Well, that's the best way. I mean, and I'm sure that translates into the work itself.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And then the stamps are from India, and I always wanted to use them because the day that I bought the stamps, I left my wallet sitting on the counter at this store in Varanasi, and I was walking away, and I was pretty far away, and this guy came running up behind me with my wallet.
Wow. Yeah.
And wanted to be sure I got my wallet back, and it was just a really good experience. And it's an easy way to make work look carved in a way, but it's stamped.
Right. So you kind of have this association of generosity with those stamps.
Yeah, generosity and just being on the other side of the world. I feel privileged to have spent that time in India, and it helps me, just remember that too and cherish that time.
Right. Cool. Well, I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah, so nice to talk to you.
Yeah.